And we're live. All right, everybody, welcome. It is Wednesday. Let me just get my notes here. I'm reasonably on time. And we will start this Q&A with the first question, which is how to make meals less boring. So bodybuilding is not about eating, and there's a certain monotony, right? So there's, how much dry chicken can you eat? So there's a couple of things, like what can you do to get your food better? The one is you need a good spice rack. So when I started my first contest, my coach told me, I'll get the Colonel, whatever that was called, popcorn spices, the buffalo and the super spicy and the lemon and whatever. So I bought all 48 flavors. They tasted like straight out of Chernobyl. Like it was just like chemical stuff. So like get a good spice rack, go to like whatever kind of store that you need, and get your spices there to flavor your food. That is number one. Number two, I recommend get a sous vide. Cooking with a sous vide will change your life, or maybe not, but when you cook in a sous vide, the chicken will stay fresh so much longer as if you were broiling it or whatever. So basically you cook in a low temperature and you can slightly undercook it, and when you need it in your microwave or whatever, it comes out better. Also, I had guests the other day, and I bought some very expensive steaks, and I wasn't gonna F them up. So in the sous vide, you make them rare, and then you can put them on the pan and finish them up to have a nice finish, right? Whereas if you just cook them in the pan, you might get shoe leather or whatever have you. Also in the sous vide, like, I don't know about you, but like the smell of salmon I just can't. And with the sous vide, because it's in a plastic bag, you can cook the salmon and it doesn't smell, right? So until you take it out, so you don't have the whole house stinking up. And my last tip is do not use any liquid fats. What I mean by this. So I feel like that when you're a bodybuilder, like all this like olive oil, saffron, whatever, is kind of a waste of calories, and it doesn't do much for your flavor. Let's say you have a salad. Personally, I think like that half an avocado or like 2 ounces of cheese will do much more for palatability and flavor than adding 2 tablespoons of olive oil, right? So spice rack, sous vide, and no liquid fats. Use nuts, almonds, avocado, cheese instead for flavor. Next question, should I do cardio before or after my workout? It really doesn't matter, it's like do a little bit of cardio before, it's not gonna fatigue you, maybe 4 legs. Like sometimes you might come out of work, let's say it's 6, and your boss was on top of you and like everything went wrong, and then you're hitting the weights, but you might just not be there. So like cardio can calm you down and bring you like in a better state of mind, and you do your weights from there. Or you can use it as a cool down, help with recovery, digestion afterwards. It really doesn't matter. You also don't need to split it, like you don't need to do cardio in the morning and then come back for the weights at night. I mean, if you can, great, but it's really not necessary, okay? Then I got a question from somebody that was actually very good. It's like, I know what I'm doing, but I want quicker results. Like, so now we're like in the midst of January, and people are like, I've been dieting so hard, like how can I make this fast forward? And that's very dangerous, because dangerous in the sense that now they start hopping around. So like they might be on a good program until now, and then they're saying, what about, could I maybe, drop weight quicker if I do X, or could I, maybe add a supplement or whatever. And all I can tell you is like, if the program is sound that you're having, stay the course. Because if you're losing a pound of fat a week, then come mid-February, you will have lost 4 pounds or 5, depending on how tall you are. And that's 5 grapefruits. If you take 5 grapefruits from away from here, that's very solid. So like sometimes on the day-to-day, you don't see the progress. But if you think in terms of medium term and longer run, right? You're like, if I just stay the course, like this will pay off, okay? So like if, let's say by May, you're on track to lose 20 pounds, like go to the fruits to look at 20 oranges, look how much volume that is. So if that comes off your body, I mean, wouldn't we agree that you look differently after that, right? So do not program hop or switch back and forth or whatever, because then you're just going, it would be like I'm taking French on Monday and then Italian on Tuesday and I'm switching back to Chinese. It's like you pick a language and you learn it and then you do the next one. Okay, so if your program is sound, do not flip-flop, okay? So that's that. Then there's another good question that was, what about soreness? So the first question is always like, can I train when I'm sore? And the second question is, if I'm not sore, did my workout suck? So let's look at first what is actual soreness, right? So soreness is not what people believe. It doesn't do with lactic acid. Lactic acid actually buffers you. When you run out of lactic acid, your muscle fails because it simply gets too sour. So soreness is basically tiny, tiny micro tears in the muscle. So now you're thinking, well, if I don't have those micro tears, I'm not growing, right? And that is not entirely true. So let's say, who gets soreness, right? People that are new to exercising, when you do something new, but then certain muscles don't get hardly sore ever, such as your deltoids. So the issue becomes that, for instance, I could be jumping on this bench, which wouldn't be very elegant 200 times, and I'm pretty sure by tomorrow my quads be sore, but would I be a better bodybuilder? And the answer is no, okay? So the soreness is, there's damage onto the muscle, but what you want is higher frequency. So it pays to do less damage, aka don't go beast all the time, but train more often to create greater growth in the muscle, because what limits the growth is when protein synthesis stops. So no matter how beast mode you went on Monday, today being Wednesday, the protein synthesis is back at base level, so there's no more growth, and you might be still sore. So soreness, you shouldn't drive yourself nuts if you're not sore. By the same token, let's say in a perfect universe, you're having 2 weeks paid all-in vacation, the kids are being watched, your wife, girlfriend can do something, and you can work out twice a day. You have all the meals cooked for you, you have sun. You would be in a state of sort of perpetual soreness all over the body a little bit, but it wouldn't make a difference, okay? You would still develop very nicely. Because if you think about let's say speed skaters, right? You remember Apollo Ono, his quads are humongous. They squat 10 times a week and they speed skate, okay? Or gymnasts, top gymnasts have way better shoulders than I have, okay? And you cannot convince me that they're in the rings only once a week, right? So they're also sore all the time, on a lower level. So as you grow up in terms of training age, the soreness simply becomes less, okay? Because your body gets accustomed to it. And you shouldn't despair if you're not sore. You should check, did I execute my workout properly? Did I hit my weights? And did I eat my foods? And you'll be just fine, okay? And by the same token, there's no need to stay home when you're sore, okay? So that's not the case. And with that, we get to the big question du jour, because I feel that I can't believe we still have to talk about this, but there's still people that will, on their dying breath, tell you that to get big, you have to lift big and eat big. And what they mean by this is you have to squat, bench press, and deadlift and get your numbers up and eat large amounts of food. So the problem with this particular system is it gave us a few very jacked people and a bunch of fat dudes, okay? Why is that? Well, there's several layers to it. So first of all, these exercises are not particularly great for bodybuilding, and I get back to that later. But muscle hypertrophy works on several different mechanisms. So one is, on my notes I have metabolic damage, which is basically pushing metabolites into the muscle, such as protons and certain, antioxidants, free radicals. Then I have mechanical stress, which is essentially tearing the fibers, which we refer to in terms of getting sore. And then there is, the last thing I have is mechanical tension, which is the shortening and the lengthening of the muscle. The shortening, the lengthening. So as you can see from here, this is where always going heavy fails. So first of all, when you're going heavy in lower reps, you will probably not create a lot of metabolic damage because you're not under tension long enough. You will definitely create stress as to tearing the muscle. But then lastly, the lengthening and shortening falls, quote unquote, pun intended, short. Because when you train heavy, you'll be training in the mid-range, and you will also recruit other muscles at the endpoints of the strength curve. So if you're just training at midpoint, you're not maximizing the exercise or the muscle. Then furthermore, people that can grow on this type of system, let's say 5x5 or whatever, they are mostly consisting out of type 2 fibers, okay? Now, you and I were all muds. We're like 50% 1, 50% 2, if we're lucky, fibers, okay? So the type 1 fibers are not going to grow from this type of training, which means 50% of your growth potential are not being activated, so they need higher reps and so on and so forth. Additionally, striving to always bigger numbers leads to lifting the weight, but using other muscles and also, shall we say, using momentum, inertia, and so on and so forth. So don't get me wrong, you should get stronger, but there's other considerations also, because if you're just bouncing the weight up and down, you're not really that strong. So you need to get stronger, but in a way that allows you to create proper tension. So you need to do exercise and get bigger, but the question is, what do you do in terms of the end of the strength curve, like the contracted and the stretched phase, right? So when people simply chase numbers, and I fell for that myself. So when I was a lot younger, I had a 400-pound bench, but I looked like crap. Everything was inflamed, watery, and my chest wasn't developing because I was just heaving the weight up using my delts and my tris. And once I realized that the chest does this, I actually grew. So there's some videos on YouTube that I made. Yes, everybody has to squat, hip hinge, push and pull, but there are different exercises that can do that for you, right? So if you saw the video of my brother that I put up, I think 2 days ago, he's very tall. He's like almost 7 foot, so he cannot do a barbell squat without his knees turning like crazy, but he can do a trap bar squat, So that's one you're going to consider. And then you have to work the edges of the strength curve. So let's say for your quads, there would be sissy squats for the stretch, leg extensions for the contraction, and then different rep ranges. And then lastly is also that a lot of people cannot execute the big lifts properly once they join the gym because they don't have the athletic background. So you tell a guy who's brand new, oh, you got to go under the bar and bring up your weight, he's probably going to get injured, right? Because he just doesn't have the mechanics. So you're much better off learning in the leg press, and then doing some cable lunges, cable squats, and then work his way up eventually to the barbell squat, okay? So you got to remember, there are no must-do exercises. There are must-do movements such as the squat, the hip hinge, push and pull, but there's no, you got to do this exercise or you're dead. That is all nonsense. And then this whole eat big to get big is also hocus pocus, because yes, certain people who are like on the upper end of genetics, yeah, they can eat and stay lean. You and I will be sumo wrestlers, okay? So if you go around the gym, there are a lot of people that have an okay amount of strength, but really shitty bodies, hunched forward, a little bit of a belly, overactive quads because they've only been squatting, no deadlifts, whatever. So like by the logic, oh, they're really strong, they should be looking great. Well, they're not, okay, because they didn't cover all the other aspects. So yes, you have to get stronger and you have to eat in a calorie surplus to get bigger. However, the calorie surplus is not as big as we would like to believe. So if you're cleaning on Dunkin' Donuts before your squat workout, you're not going to get where you want to go. I'm sorry, it doesn't work this way, okay? So as always, like, you have to consult the science or watch my videos and just don't be a lemming, okay? Only because something is a dogma, right? I mean, people told us the earth was flat for the longest time. Some people still believe that. That doesn't mean it's right, okay? So, I mean, you are grown up, you have the right, and you should have the ability to question that and think like, what I need to do. So like, if the pecs do this primarily, then maybe doing this isn't the greatest of ideas, okay? So with that, I'm gonna head out back to work, enough ranting, and I'll see you guys next week, okay? Thanks as always. Can you build muscle after age? Sorry, no, okay, last question. That's a very good question. So the age thing, there's two components, right? So there's your actual age, what the calendar says, and then there's your training age. So I'm really old on both because my training age is 30 years. I started when I was 12, so I just dated myself. So there's not going to be much more progress for me going forward, realistically speaking. It's kind of depressing. So if somebody starts training in their 30s, I mean, their hormonal peak obviously has passed, they're not teenagers anymore, but there's still the potential of making really good gains. So yes, you can absolutely make gains at any age. It's just realistically it's going to be slower, right, than most people. But it depends on, and I made a video about this on YouTube, I believe. you know, how much sleep are you getting, how stressful is your life, what kind of food you can afford, what kind of coaching, and so on and so forth. So yeah, Michael King says he's 67 and yes he can, so there's that answer. Okay, all right guys, I gotta go back to work, and you should too, my God.